Hi guys, Kate here. Today I have for you my baby monkey crochet tutorial. I love this pattern, he's super cute and he's really easy to make. So let's get into it. Alright, so to start off, let's talk yarn. You'll need two colors, one for the body and one for the outer shell and the fur. So I'm using purple for my fur and head for the rest of the body. I also have a 4mm hook because that is medium weight yarn that I'm using, and I like a 4mm hook, I think it's the perfect size. And then of course I have my darning needle for sewing and my scissors for cutting all those yarn ends at the end. And my stitch marker as I go along will help me a lot in the process. And then I also have some stuffing just for the head, body, and legs. And on top of that, if you're going to use eyes that are plastic eyes, I have these 10mm ones that I recommend from Amazon. But definitely if you're giving this to a younger kid or a baby, I would recommend embroidering those eyes on. That will be so nice and eliminate any hazards that might, be created by the plastic eyes. And I will show you how to do that later. So let's begin with the head. I'm going to start with my lighter colored loops and threads yarn, and I'm going to make a magic circle. Now if you need help with this, there is a tutorial on my channel if you scroll down a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to get that tail out of the way, and then we're just going to start with some single crochets into that magic ring that we just made. We are going to put 6 single crochets into the ring. So just count as you go, and when you have 6, we will start doing our increases. Alright, now I am getting that tail out of the way and putting in my stitch marker right in that last of the 6 stitches, just to make sure I'm keeping my place as I go along. And for this next round, pretty simple, we're just going to put 2 single crochets in every single one of those 6 single crochets. That means we are doing an increase in every stitch all the way around. As you can see, I am having a little trouble. Watch your tension as you go along. Smaller hook and thinner yarn can mean making a lot tighter of a stitch than you wish to, and that can create problems as you go along. So don't repeat my mistake. Alright, and as I finish this round, I'm just pulling that tail tight to close up that little center hole, and I'm moving my stitch marker to the last stitch of the last round, just to keep my place as I continue to move along in this circle. For this next round, we're going to continue with our increases. I'm just counting along to make sure I still have 12. It's important to make sure you have the same amount of stitches that you need every round, especially when you're making something that's going to go within a fur shell like we're doing with this headpiece. Now I am doing 1 single crochet in this stitch and then an increase in the next, so that's 2 single crochets in the next stitch, and then 1 single crochet in the stitch after that, and so we're just going to repeat the pattern all the way around. And at the end of this round you should have 18 single crochets all the way around. Alright, now that we've done 1 and then an increase, I bet you can guess it, we're doing 2 and then increase. So I'm just doing my last increase and getting that stitch marker in the last stitch. And we will continue on with our increases, now doing 2 single crochets and an increase in a repetition all the way around. And at the end you can count and make sure you have 24 stitches. Alright, now that I've finished that round, I'm doing my last increase, putting my stitch marker back in, and now we are going to be continuing with our increases again this time doing 3 single crochets and then an increase. So that's first stitch is 1 single crochet, second stitch is another, third stitch is a third, and then 2 single crochets in the fourth stitch, all the way around. And you should have 30 stitches at the end of this round. As you can see, we're going up in multiples of 6, and we will decrease in multiples of 6 as well. Alright, we are now coming up on our last round of increases, so I'm just going to finish up that increase right there and count all the way around for my 30 stitches. And after that, we are going to do our last round, which is going to be 4 single crochets and an increase all the way around, and we should end with 36 stitches. So I'm just going to put 4 single crochets and then an increase all the way around. Alright, so we have created the top of the head, and I'm just going to finish those increases, and as you can see, it's a pretty decently sized circle. And now we are going to start doing our single crochets down. So there are going to be no increases, just single crochets in every single stitch around, and we are going to do 36 single crochets around, as you should have in your circle, and we are going to do that for 5 rows. So do 5 rounds of single crochets. And voila, we have all of our single crochet rounds done. So after those 5 rounds, I recommend putting in your eyes, and I would put those between rounds 6 and 7, about 5 stitches apart. And again, those are for the plastic eyes that need those backs put in before you sew the whole head shut. And then we're going to begin with our decreases. So remember, before the single crochet rounds, we had 4 and then an increase. Now we're doing 4 and then a decrease. And again, remember, for the decreases, we're putting our hook in the first loop of those 2 stitches, pulling through, and then pulling through 2. Now by the end of this round, you should have 30 single crochets all the way around, and I will see you there. Alright, and as I finish up that row, I'm ending on a decrease, which is a good way to track if you're keeping track of your stitches adequately as you go around. See if you're ending on those increases or decreases, and that can really help you know if you have enough stitches as you go. Now I'm going to do my next round, which is going to be 3 single crochets and then a decrease all the way around, and that should end us up with 24 stitches at the end of this round. Alright, we're going to continue with decreases just to start really closing up this sphere shape, and then eventually we'll be able to stuff it and fully close it. But for now, let's just do 2 and then a decrease all the way around. So 2 single crochets in 2 stitches, and then a decrease in the next 2 stitches. And by the end of this round, you should have 18 single crochets all the way around. And I will see you then. Alright, just a couple more rounds left. This next round is going to be one single crochet and then a decrease all the way around, which will leave us 12 stitches after we finish. You can stuff it now. I like to make it a little bit more closed when I stuff it just so it's easier to finish up without a bunch of stuffing all over my hook and my hands. But I'm just going to keep going around and I will see you at the end. Okay, now that we have finished this round, we should have 12 stitches left. And I actually am going to stuff it at this point. I think it's a perfect amount of opening so that you don't have to really cram it in with like a, like a stick or something, but you're also just not letting it fall out. I'm also going to make that loop a little bit bigger when I stuff because it pulls on the yarn attached to the ball. You can even take out your stitch marker and put it through that loop to make sure that if the loop gets pulled on too tight, it won't fall out and you won't lose stitches. See, even if I tug on it, it can't, fall out. Now I'm just going to stuff it, and this kind of takes a while to figure out how to get the best spherical shape. You kind of have to move it around, but it's really just a guess and check, so keep moving it around and see what you like. See how much you need, see what makes it firm, or I'd see if it bounces back when I press on it, and if it indents, I keep continuing to add stuffing. So do it to your liking, and once you're finished, we can meet up for the final round of decreases. Alright, now we're doing our last round of decreases. So I'm just going to get my hook in that loop and put my stitch marker back just so I know if I'm doing 6 decreases around where I should stop. And this actually does kind of help when there's stuffing inside. It helps you have a finger on the sphere. Now I'm just going to keep moving around and doing a decrease every single stitch. Once it's finished, we will be able to sew in that end and close up the sphere. And then as you'll see, I'll just pull it through a random space in the middle of the sphere, cut it, and poke the little extra end inwards so that you can't see that anything ever happened or that anything was sewn in. So that's my method, but obviously do what works for you. And once this is finished, we can move on to the body. Alright, now that our sphere of a head is looking great, we are going to move on to the body. So I'm using my purple color. This is just I like to use a darker color than what I used for maybe the skin texture of the monkey, just to make the fur stand out. And I love this purple color, so I'm going to make a magic ring with it. Moving the tail out of the way, we are going to put 6 single crochets into this magic ring, just like we did for the head. And then we're going to pull the tail tight and continue with our increases. As you can see, I'm starting off without a stitch marker. Right now I'm doing 2 single crochets in every stitch around, so that's an increase in every of the 6 stitches. By the end of this round, you should have 12 stitches. Now, the stitch marker is helpful a lot, but for these first couple rounds, I kind of sometimes find it tedious to be moving a stitch marker around for a round with not very many stitches. So sometimes you'll see me doing the 6 and then the 12 with just no stitch marker, just freehand. And it's really up to you how you feel comfortable with starting off your crochet. So I recommend it if you feel a little bit more comfortable, but if not, don't worry, the stitch marker is great. Now I have 12, and I can continue with my next round. I will put the stitch marker in at this point, just to, start when it gets a little bit bigger, a little more complicated. It's easier for me. And now I'm going to do 1 and then increase, just like we did with the head. And we're going to do this all the way around, and by the end we should have 18 stitches all the way around. Alright, finishing that up, we're just going to move that stitch marker. And then for the next round, we're going to want to do 1, 2, and then an increase all the way around. So 2 stitches, 2 single crochets, and an increase for a total of 24 stitches. Alright, so this next round will be our last round of increases before we just start doing our single crochets and a little extra step to make that body really rounded out. So I'm going to do a little counting, put my stitch marker in, and we are going to move on to 3 single crochets and an increase all the way around. This should leave you with 30 single crochets at the end of this round. So just 3 single crochets and then 1 increase all the way around. Alright, so this has been looking pretty much like what we did with the head of the monkey, but right about now we're going to switch things up a little bit. So you should have 30 stitches, and then after this you're going to be doing something a little specific to make the little belly of the monkey. So just to make it stick out a little bit, give it, just a little more huggability, I think it makes him adorable, we're going to be doing an increase in all of the next 6 stitches. So in each of those stitches, you're going to put 2 single crochets instead of the normal, 1 single crochet. And then after you do those 6 stitches, you'll have an extra 6 stitches in your round now. You should have 36 by the end of this round, because after those 6 increases, you're just going to do a single crochet around for the rest of that round. So just continue with your single crochets after those increases. Alright, after this round, this was a little funky, but don't worry, it's going to get really easy. For the next 7 rounds, we're just going to be doing single crochets. So 36 single crochets all the way around for 7 rounds. So just start those, and I will see you at the end of that. Alright, congratulations, you have done a lot of single crochet rounds. Now to finish off the monkey, we're going to start by finishing off that little belly. You might already see it like jutting out, but we're just going to round it out by doing 6 decreases in a row. So remember we did 6 increases, now we're just righting the wrongs by doing 6 decreases and making our stitches fall back to 30 single crochets around. And once you do 6 decreases in a row, just using those front loops, you are going to single crochet around. So we did 6 increases, then single crochet around, now it's 6 decreases, then single crochet around. And continue that, and I will see you at the end of the round. Alright, so now we are going to be doing a round of single crochets after this all the way around. So we're not doing any decreases yet, just a round of single crochets, and I will see you at the end of the round. Okay, so if you remember, we had stopped doing our regular pattern after we did 3 single crochets and an increase way back when. So now we're just going to start with those regular decrease rounds, and we're going to do 3 single crochets and a decrease for this round, all the way around. So what we'll be doing is gradually closing off the body, but not making it like too spherical, elongating it enough so that it looks like, you know, you give him room to have a neck, to have a head and all that. So we'll start with 3 single crochets and a decrease, and I'll meet you at the end of the round. Okay, now we're going to, instead of continuing to decrease, we're going to single crochet around. So like I said, we're just going to be elongating that, you know, closing off of the body to make it seem a little bit more monkey-like and a little more upright. So just single crochet around, and then we will do another round of decrease. Alright, as promised, this next round we are going to do some decreases. So just 2 single crochets and then a decrease all the way around. By the way, at the end of the last round you should have had 24, and now at this round you're going to have 18. So at the end of this round I will see you, and we will finish our single crochets and our decreases. Alright, so let's stop here. I'm going to put that stitch marker in, pull out a loop, because we are going to be stuffing this body a little bit, giving it a little bit more, chubbiness, giving it that cute monkey belly, all of that. Let's get some stuffing in there. It's going to take me a minute. Just take your time making sure everything feels correctly formed. Stuffing can sometimes make weird lumps and bumps, so just don't worry about, rushing it and stuffing it all in at once. I normally do little pieces at a time and layer them up for a nice finished body. Alright, like last time, we're kind of doing that same thing where we keep doing the single crochet rounds between the decrease rounds. So this is another single crochet round. Just put in single crochets all the way around, so your amount of stitches should not change. Alright, now we are going to be doing our last round of decreases. So for this round, we're just going to be doing simply one single crochet and then a decrease all the way around. By the end of this round, you should have 12 stitches, but we're not going to be doing any more decreases to finish it off because we want to give him a neck, so his head doesn't just go right onto his body without anything to bridge the gap. So we'll give him his neck, and after this round, we'll do some single crochets. I will meet you at the end. Alright, so before we do our last two rounds, I'm just adding a little more stuffing in that space that we created when we made some more rounds after we had initially stuffed it, and just preparing it to kind of attach to the head without it being, too much of a flimsy join, where there's not enough stuffing and it just kind of feels unfinished. So I'm just going to add a little more stuffing. And then for the next round and final couple of things, we are going to be doing 2 rounds of single crochets. So just twice around, do 12 single crochets, and from there we will finish off the body without doing any more decreases, and eventually we can attach that to the bottom of the head. Alright, and with that, our body is looking amazing. I hope you can see the little belly that you formed with those increases and then decreases. It's going to be an adorable little monkey body, and then we're going to cut that tail off, leaving a decently long tail for sewing, because you're going to have to sew the head to the body just like that. But first we have to make the fur surrounding the head, so that it doesn't just look like a ping pong ball on a eggplant. Okay, so let's make the head fur. Okay, so to make the head fur, I'm starting in that purple color that we use for the body because if you can imagine a monkey, it's pretty much covered in fur. So with the purple, we are going to be doing 8 single crochets in a magic ring instead of the 6 that we did normally. This is because I'm trying to make the head shell just slightly bigger than the head so that it can wrap around and snugly keep that head in place for when it's sewed on top. So do 8 single crochets in the magic ring. Now pulling that tail closed, I'm just going to get my stitch marker involved, get it in there, and prepare for my next round, which is going to be a round of all increases. So just keep increasing all the way around. You should have 16 at the end of this increase round. Alright, after that round of all increases, our next round is going to be a round of 1 single crochet and then an increase. So by the end of this round, we should have 24, because in multiples of 8 we had 8, 16, now 24 stitches. So just do 1 single crochet and then an increase all the way around. Alright, now that we've completed that round, we're going to do our last round of increases before we start doing the just single crochet rounds that really create the shape of the head shell. So this is going to be, as maybe predicted, 2 single crochets and an increase. So that should mean we have 32 stitches at the end of this round. 8, 16, 24, and 32. Okay, now that we've finished all of our rounds of increase, we are going to start with just the single crochets that go down. So we are going to do a staggering 8 rounds of single crochets all the way around, and at the end of that we can just finish with our little fur piece, our little fluff piece that really turns the shell into something adorable for the monkey. So stick with it, you got this. 8 rounds of single crochet, and I will see you at the end. Okay, at the end of all of those rounds, I have 3 more single crochets before I finish that round. So what I'm going to do is, instead of just doing it normally, we're going to make those little head fluffy things that make the monkey really cute. So I'm going to slip stitch into the 3rd stitch before the end, and I'm going to chain 4. So slip stitch into that stitch and then immediately chain 4. Now, skipping that last chain, we're going to single crochet 3. So we skipped that 4th chain, and now we're single crocheting 3 all the way down the chain. And then after we single crochet these 3, we're just going to flip it so that it's normally, the head is normally where we would hold it if we were just crocheting normally. And we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch of the 3. So just slip stitch. Now you should have that slip stitch and then 1 more stitch, and that stitch will have your stitch marker on it. And now we're just chaining 4 again. So twice you'll chain 4, this time same thing, you're skipping that 4th stitch and single crocheting down 3. And once you single crochet down that last one, same thing as last time, you're just going to slip stitch into the stitch with the stitch marker on it, or just your last stitch. And that concludes the making of those little head pieces. So after that, you can just cut the yarn, leaving a very long tail for sewing, because you're going to be having to sew all the way around that shell with the head. And once you cut the yarn, you can just pull it through, and you finish the head shell. Alright, so for the ears, I'm using the color that we used for the head. So instead of that purple, I'm using the white color, and I'm making a magic ring, and into that magic ring I'm going to put 4 single crochets. So instead of, we've previously done 8 and 6, this time we are just doing 4 single crochets. Alright, so far we've been increasing like normal, but now we're going to change it up a little bit to make the ear the shape that we want to make. So after I finish this, I'm going to get my stitch marker in there, but we are going to be switching up what we do now and working sort of backwards to make a new shape. So I am actually going to chain 1 after I finish this round, and after I chain 1, I'm flipping my work so that now I am working the opposite direction. So instead of continuing in that circle, we're just chaining and flipping. I'm also going to take my stitch marker out just to make it a little easier as you work. And after this, we are going to be doing 1 and then increase across. So see how we have all these stitches now working this way? So it's kind of the same thing, but now working in the opposite direction. So as you can see, I'm doing 1 single crochet and then an increase. And you're going to be doing this all the way across. 1 single crochet and an increase. As you can see, the back of your work should kind of be towards you in this case. 1 single crochet and an increase. And then we're going to do that last stitch. We're going to be doing another last single crochet and our increase. After that, we are going to be doing, as you can see, we have that little ear shell sort of shape going in, and that's going to fit really nicely on the side of the head as a little ear. So I kind of know what I'm doing, but not fully. This pattern just seemed to make the cutest looking ear. So after that, we're going to be doing a single crochet round. So I'm going to chain 1 and then flipping my work again. We're just going to be going around with single crochets to give the ear a little bit more of a caving in sense, so it has more of a curvature to it and looks more realistic. And this will come out to 11 single crochets across. So I'll do 11 single crochets across, and then there's a final single crochet at the base that does not get touched because it would, to finish up that stitch, would make it look a little too circular for us because we're trying to make this rainbow, crescent shape, and we don't want to make it look like a circle, so that we can attach it nicely to the head as a very nice looking ear. Finally, I'm just going to make sure it looks good on the monkey and cut, leaving a long tail for sewing eventually. And you're going to want to make 2 of these ears, so definitely make another one after this one. Alright, so for the snout we're going to make a chain, so we need to start with a slip knot, and from that slip knot we're going to be chaining 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're going to skip that stitch that we just chained, and we're going to chain 5 down. So just those middle pieces, skip the 7th stitch and chain 1, or single crochet, sorry, 2, 3, 4, 5. So after you single crochet 5, in the 6th stitch you're going to be putting 3 single crochets into that stitch. So there's 2, and then I kind of flip it around to the back side for the last one and get that tail to my left, holding it in place with my middle finger, and I do my final increase. Now working on the back side of those chains into the loops, they're a little harder to spot, but there should be a hole that's pretty visible. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and finally, just like the last side, we're going to do our 3 single crochets in the 6th stitch. So now you'll have an increase on both sides, and those are the sides we'll be increasing into every single round. So you'll have a front kind of half and then the back half that you do after the first increase. Now we're going to move on to the next round to make this snout a little bit bigger. So for this next round, we're just going to do the same thing we did last time, but now, as you can see, I'm going to put 6 stitches across the front half and then do my 3 stitch increase into the 7th stitch, and then I'll do the same on the back. Alright, so as we approach that 7th stitch, it should very clearly be on the very end of one of the sides of the shape that you're crocheting, and as you can see I am putting 3 stitches into that stitch. And then afterward I will go back down, do 6 more single crochets, and then on my 7th I will do my 3 single crochet increase once again. Okay, so for the next round we are going to keep on the same path, but this time we're going to do 8 single crochets, and then in the 9th stitch we'll do our 3 single crochet increase once again, and then we can continue on the back side with the same thing, all the way around. So I actually messed up right there and I did one too many stitches before I did my increase. So you gotta be wary of that. It makes it look a little wonky when you put it back on. I sewed it on a little funny. But it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, so don't stress it, don't sweat it too much if you do an extra stitch. We are just all learning here. And then for this next round, I am going to be doing 9 single crochets and then an increase all the way around. So I'll do my 9 single crochets and then of course the 3 single crochet increase. That's a little different from the normal increase. And then after that, we'll be done with our increases, so deep breath out, no worries anymore about those. Those are a little stressful, especially for an oblong shape. This can be a little more confusing than the average circle. So you're doing great, and we're almost done with this round. Alright, so now that you've done all of your increases, you are just going to single crochet all the way around 2 times. So I put in my stitch marker when I did that last of the 3 increases, so I did 1, 2, 3 increases, and I put in my stitch marker. Now I'm just going around in single crochets, and I will do that for 2 rounds before my snout is finished. Alright, as I finish that up, I'm going to take out my stitch marker and I'm going to cut my yarn, leaving a very long tail for sewing because this is going to be a lot of sewing all the way around the mouth of the monkey. Alright, so this might be the easiest thing you make this whole tutorial, so get excited. This is the little nose for the monkey, and we're going to make this by doing a magic circle, and into that magic ring, there's just one more step before it's finished really. We're going to put 4 single crochets. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now after that, I'm just going to pull that tail really nice and tight to make it, definitely you want to make it a circle, and I'm going to get that 4th single crochet on my hook and do a slip stitch. So once I do that slip stitch, I'll just pull through both the stitch and the loop that was on my hook, and now we have a little bit of a circular nose. So you can cut that off, leaving a decent tail for sewing, and we will place that right between the eyes and above the snout. Alright, now let's make the arms, the little hands. These are going to be so cute. So I start with a magic ring, and I'm using my white yarn to start, and that's the skin colored yarn that I am choosing to use. And then eventually we will switch to the purple yarn or the fur colored yarn that I chose to use. And I'm going to put 5 single crochets into the into the magic ring. Now this is the hand, so once we do these 5 single crochets, we will do some increases, and I'm going to put in my stitch marker. Now we will do an increase in every single stitch so that by the end of this we will have 10 stitches around. Now we are going to do a single crochet all across this round. So you're going to do 10 single crochets. Now after this round, we're going to do one little tricky step in the next round, but after that is very smooth sailing. So we are actually going to do 4 single crochets and then a bobble stitch. So that's a little bit different, but what you do, so we're going to start with our 4 single crochets at first. There's 2, 3, and 4, and then this guy is going to make up our little thumb. So the monkey's little thumb will be on display. Now I'm not actually sure if monkeys had opposable thumbs, but I gotta look that up. I'll look it up. But what we do for the bobble stitch is we wrap over and go in, and then we wrap over and pull through the stitch that we just went into. Now we should have 3. Now wrap around again and pull through 2. So it's very much like a double crochet, but don't finish the double crochet. We're not done. You're gonna wrap over, go in again, wrap around, go in, pull up 2 loops again. So you're repeating the same step, but now instead of 2, you finish with 3. Wrap around, go in again, pull through, wrap around, and pull through 2 again. Now you'll have 4. And then wrap around, go in, wrap around, pull through, and wrap around, pull through 2 one more time, and you should have 5. Once you have 5 loops on your hook, wrap around one last time and pull through all of those loops. Now that you've pulled through all of those loops, just continue on your way. Single crochet the rest of the round. As you can see, I used my finger to push out that little bobble stitch, and it creates a really cute little thumb for the monkey. So I love the stitch. It's like a popcorn stitch almost, and it's really handy for when you're trying to make like a little ball or a little, ballooning little shape. It's perfect. Now for the next round, we are just going to be doing single crochets all the way around. And at the end of this round, don't finish the last single crochet because we will be doing a color change. So as you can see, I did not finish that single crochet that I'm making right now. And once I do the first half where I wrap around and pull through, I can bring in that purple color and start to make the fur. So I finish that stitch with some tension so that the purple can seamlessly join with the white. And I'll replace my stitch marker once more. And now we can just single crochet with purple. So there's no more increases or decreases, just straight single crochet all the way around. And I'm going to cut those little strands of white and I'm going to push them into the hand so that they won't be any bother and they won't be at risk of unraveling later. If, someone was to pull on them, they will be fully out of sight. And with the fur color that you choose, you are going to do 12 rounds of 10 single crochets. So just all the way around for 12 rounds, and then there will be one more step before we can sew them onto the body. Alright, so I'm meeting you here at the end of those 12 rounds, and I'm just going to remove that stitch marker because we won't be needing it. We're going to flatten the hand and the arm so that it's just kind of 2D, very, simple shape, and as you can see, it will attach the body like so. But before we attach it, we need to sew it closed. So I'm just going to do that with the crochet hook. I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to put it, well, I'll do one more stitch first. Because if I do one more stitch, then I'm aligning it so that when I crochet it closed, the seam will align with the thumb. So I'm just going to do single crochets all the way across, and I think it's 5 single crochets. So you'll just connect those 2 stitches that are right across from each other when you flatten the arm. So there's my second one, and I go through all 4 loops of both stitches. There's my third one, there's my fourth one, and then the fifth one can be a little tricky. You just kind of have to hit that little end bit. And once I get that, as you can see, it's very nicely tidy, and we can sew it onto the body. I'm going to cut, leaving a nice and long tail for sewing, and you're going to want to make 2 of these. So make 2 arms. Unless you want a one-armed monkey, absolutely no judgment, but I will be making 2 of these and eventually sewing them on. Alright, so for our legs, they're going to be super similar to our arms in that same color that you're using for the skin of the monkey. You're going to make a magic circle, and into that magic circle you are going to single crochet 5. So simply move that tail out of your way and get 5 single crochets in the magic circle. Now I'm going to pull that tail tightly closed and continue increasing. So I'll get my stitch marker in there and we will do an increase all the way around to have 10 at the end of this round. So we'll have 10 stitches because we're putting 2 single crochets into every stitch around. Now we are just going to do some single crochets. So just like with the arms, right now it's going to be very easy, no bobble stitch or anything. We're just going to do 4 rounds of single crochets with the white or whatever color you choose yarn. So just single crochets 4 times around. Okay, as I'm finishing the last of the 4 rounds of single crochet in the skin color that you choose, I'm going to switch to the fur color. Now that's the purple, same as we did for the arm. We're just going to do a little join by finishing that last stitch with the purple yarn. And likewise, you are going to do 12 rounds of single crochets with this yarn all the way around, and at the end we will do some stuffing and crochet it all together. Alright, so I have finished my rounds of single crochets, and this one stuffing will require a little bit of poking and prodding because you're going to need to get it all the way down. Now, normally I would do it as I go. I kind of forgot this time, so if you want to do it as you go, I very much encourage you and applaud you for remembering to do it as you go. But for me, I just grab one of those like little wooden chopstick looking things, and I kind of just press it down and get it to where I want it because it can bunch up. So honestly, don't follow in my footsteps right here. Do it as you go. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world because you will be able to work some in with the right kind of tool. And as I finish up stuffing, there's only one thing left to do for the legs, and that's what we did for the arms. So I'm just going to align it so that my hook is nicely situated on top of my crochet, and I can easily essentially sew together the 2 sides of the leg using single crochets. So I'll just crochet it together with 5 single crochets across the top. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and my last one will be a little awkward. See how I can't really get it around? Sometimes it takes a little bit of maneuvering to get that last little stitch. As you can see, now you have a cute little stuffed leg. You can move the stuffing around even once it's tucked into your leg. And I'm going to cut, leaving a long tail for sewing. Alright, so the last piece we're going to make together is the tail. Now the tail is very simple. It's basically just like the leg, but a little bit smaller. So we're going to make a magic ring and put 4 single crochets into that ring. Now I'm going to get my stitch marker, and after we place it, we are going to do a round of increases to make 8. So we're going to do increase in every single of the 4 stitches, 2 single crochets per single crochet, all the way around. Alright, so now that we've done our round of increase, we should have 8 stitches around, and from here we are just going to do 2 rounds of single crochets all the way around. So you'll keep 8 stitches and just do 2 rounds in your skin color all the way around. On the last stitch of the second round, you're going to do a color change into the fur color, so be careful not to finish that stitch so you can just seamlessly do your color change. Alright, now that we've done those 2 rounds, I'm going to get my purple yarn and we are going to switch to our fur color on the last single crochet around of that round. And once we get our purple or fur color on, we are going to do 18 rounds of just single crochets in our fur color all the way around. So you'll keep 8 stitches the whole way around and do 18 rounds in this fur color. Alright, so this is what your tail should look like when it's all done, and instead of sewing this closed through single crochets, we're just going to hold off for now, and once we're finished with our 18 rows, I'm just going to cut it and pull through, and eventually we will flatten this, not stuff it, and sew it to the monkey. So I am tucking my needle under the skin and up through the back of the fur. This is to just make sure that none of the stitches in the front row are being obscured by the sewing. I don't want any of them to be covered up because I like how that looks as a border. So as you can see, I'm going behind those stitches right there and into that little V behind the V, into the skin, and then I'm pulling my needle up into the next V. So I'm just going to continue to do this, going out of one V and down behind the next, into the skin, and pulling it up through the next V. So I'm going behind those 2 little lines right there, into the skin, pulling my needle up, and I'm going to bring it, first I'm going to pull the yarn all the way through. That's a great strategy if you just want to make sure your placing is going to be good. And then as you can see, I go behind the 2 lines of the next stitch and I pull up. So I'm just going to work behind that little ridge around just to give it a very nice clean feeling once it's all the way sewn, and I will see you at the end of this sewing. So I said I'd see you at the end, but I forgot that it would be a little trickier to go behind these little fur bits. So I'm really just going to maneuver behind those two. I'm not going to sew them down to the head. I'm going to let them to kind of be free hanging, but I am going to make sure that the behind them is nice and tight around the head. And if you finish those, that will bring you right to where you started. So you can just put your needle right where it kind of began, and I'm going to bring it out through some random spot in the head so that it's kind of nice. And if the more odd places that you end your yarn, like the farther away you end it from where you began it, I think is the better. Less chance of it, pulling up eventually, coming out. So I'm just going to bring it to some random spot, and I'm going to cut it right there and tuck it nicely within the head. So hopefully that worked nicely for you, and your shell should be snugly wrapped around your monkey's head. Alright, so let's sew the head to the body. I'm going to place the front of the face so that maybe the nose, the mouth, and the eyes will be facing right with that belly right there, that little tummy that we made. I'm going to make sure that the monkey is facing the front of their body. So just like so, it'll be very easy to sew this body to the head because we're just going to go in a very simple circular motion. Now this is going to be kind of a whip stitch because we're not just going to be going, behind a stitch, in and out, we're going to be going around. So as you'll see, I'll place the head nicely so that the fur wrap on the head is going to be far in front of the body so that it's nicely tucked all together and it's one color all the way down. You don't want the different colored skin of the head to be touching the other colored skin of the body because then it looks a little unnatural, I think. So I'm just going to start by putting my needle approximately where that body piece would be lined up, and situating my head and kind of holding it in place as I sew so that it won't get, a little bit obscured and be less centered when I begin to actually sew. So here I am putting my needle again into just some bit of the head right where the body lines up, and I am going to bring the thread that I just pulled through, that working thread, around and into the next stitch. As you can see, I don't just go in, out, I go around and I pull through the head again, so there is a little bit of a loop bridging the gap between the body and the head. And I'm going to do this all the way around. I think this creates a pretty seamless join. I think it looks pretty good, and it connects the neck to the head very nicely. So I'm just going to go all the way around in a reasonable loop, and at the end I will cut and weave in my end. So this is actually a challenge that I talked about earlier when I was stuffing the body, but I did forget to mention you have to stuff a little bit more when you're sewing the head to the body, just because if you didn't stuff it fully before, there will be a little bit of a gap, and you don't want some gaping hole where there's no stuffing within the body, between the body and the head. So I just put a little bit more, tucked it nice and tight right there, so that when you do sew the body to the head, there will be a nice stiff join and it won't look too floppy. So I will meet you when the head is fully sewn. Alright, this monkey is shaping up to be adorable. I am now going to put on the snout. This is a little bit of a challenge because you want that bottom ridge of the snout to really align with the ridge of the head where the fur meets the skin. So your yarn will probably be on the end like that. It kind of looks like a lemon or a football shape, so you'll be on the end of the lemon on one side. And I'm just going to situate that so it's right in the corner of the mouth. Then once I thread my needle, I can begin doing the same sort of whip stitch, the same loop stitch that I like to do to sew it on a little more seamlessly. And I'm going to do that all the way around each little stitch. Also, I am so sorry this has been off screen for so long. All I'm doing is putting my needle through the stitch and then into the head and then through the stitch of the snout and then into the head and pulling up again. So it's just very much of like a loop sewing. Please don't be mad at me, I'm so sorry. I'll fix this next time, I promise. Okay, I'm a little bit running out of yarn, so this is another word to the wise. Definitely do not let yourself run out of yarn on important things like this, because it's really annoying to have to like weave in a new end and do all that with an extra piece that you have to add in because you ran out. So anyway, heed my warning. But right now I'm just stuffing it a little bit. I'm making sure that all of the snout is nice and cushiony, and that takes a little bit of stuffing and just figuring out how to get everything integrated into the snout so that it's not going to be, imbalanced or just look a little bit off. It just takes a little bit of maneuvering and manipulation. And once you have enough that you think it's nicely stuffed, you can just continue sewing and finish off the snout. To finish it off adequately, I'm getting my needle and placing it through the snout and into somewhere random in the back shell of the head, pulling it through, and just tucking it in. So there's the snout. It looks adorable. It makes him look like a real cutie. I mean, it's a little lopsided. I can't say it's perfect, but I think all of the little quirks like that just give this monkey charm, and I'm not going to take it too seriously because I think he looks adorable. So now we can move on to our next piece. So to get the ears on the head, I'm just going to thread my needle on the long piece that we finished off with. There should be also a decently long tail, and we're also going to have to weave that in because the ear isn't going to be situated directly like on top of anything like the snout was. It's going to be poking out of the head, so we'll have to do a little extra work just to weave in the back tail that we left, but it should be very simple. I'm going to bring it up, and as you can see, I've put two little eyes in the monkey just for a little bit more reference as to where we're going to be putting like the nose and the mouth and the ears. All of that, it just helps with a little extra, context on the face. So I'm getting my needle and I'm placing my ear where I think it looks best on the face, just kind of in the middle between the eyes and the snout, and I'm bringing my thread through that bottom, kind of halfway down the snout. So I'm just going to bring my thread right through there, and we're going to be sewing along that flat bottom of the ear. It's going to be that same little loop stitch technique that we were doing with the snout, and I'm just going to bring my needle through the head and then back through the ear. And we're going to do this all the way across until it feels nice and snugly connected to the face. I'm finishing up that ear now, and you can see it's pretty well attached. Also, mind you, I'm doing it so that the nice part of the ear, the part that should be on the outside, is kind of on the inside, and the ridge around it is more so showing the back of the ear. But I put the nice part on the inside, so when you look the monkey in the face, you can see the nice part of the crochet for the ear, and you don't just see that back part with a little bit less, defined stitches, a little more bubbly, and less nice overall. So I'm just going to put that thread kind of somewhere random in the face again, and make sure to weave in the back part of the thread as well, the second thread. Make sure that that gets out of the way too, so that when you cut it, it can be nicely tucked in and not unravel. Now I'm just going to get my scissors and cut both of those little pieces and tuck them in with the back of my needle. Next, I'm going to do the other ear, but I will spare you the time and effort, and I will just do that on my own, but you'll see it on the finished monkey. Alright, now let's do that little nose between the eyes. The eyes being in are really going to help right now, so if you're going to embroider them later, I would either do it now using the end of the video where I show you how to embroider them in, or however you'd like to, or if you're using your plastic eyes, they should be in, so that's perfect. Honestly, sometimes I forget to put the eyes in, so I hot glue them in, but I don't recommend because sometimes it gets sticky. So here I am just making sure the nose is fully sealed and in a nice circle shape, and it's going to go right between the two eyes and the snout. And it'll have two long ends that you'll have to sew in, but that won't be very hard because you can really just place them anywhere inside the monkey and pull them out and cut them. Honestly, it's a little random how you choose to sew this in. I kind of just go through the little spot that I'd like the nose to land and go around a couple times, bring it up through the nose again, down into the face again, up through the nose again. I can do a little bit of a loop stitch or just bring it up and down. It doesn't really matter as long as the nose retains most of its shape and can still pop out of the monkey's face. After I do that, I just weave in my ends by just kind of wrapping them into the face, out of the face, and then far away to cut. Alright, so I'm going to give my monkey a little bit of a smile with some purple yarn. Obviously this has a lot of room for freedom of the artist if you want to make your smile nice and long like those classic sock monkeys, or just a little tiny one, or a frown, but I'm going to make my monkey happy and joyful. So we're going to bring the yarn right from the back. I kind of just placed it wherever, just like a couple stitches away from where I wanted the smile to be when I originally put it in, so that I could tie it and stuff it in later. So I'm going to bring the yarn around the mouth of the monkey. Sorry, you can only see his back right now, but I'm just going to bring it around like so and connect it wherever I want, just trying to keep it as symmetrical as I can across the face. And then I'll pull it through, tie those two loops together because they're coming out of the same hole, so that when you tie them and push them into the face, they can disappear and have a little more fortification so they won't like come out. Because when you're just sewing one line like the mouth, you really want to make sure you tie it tight so that it can't just pop out. Alright, so I have my arms ready to be sewn on, and I'm going to put the thumbs facing towards the tummy, towards the front of the monkey on either side. That's just a note because sometimes I sew it all and then I realize I've put it the wrong way, so just make sure your thumbs are facing towards the monkey, the front of the monkey, and now we can, his face is going to watch us while we sew him on, but now I'm just going to thread my needle and place that crocheted line at the top of the arm along the place essentially where the body meets the head. I'm going to sew it as close to that as I can, and I'm going to do that little whip stitch that we were talking about, the loop stitch, just going across every single stitch and back through to make sure it's nicely secured. As I wrap up the sewing, you can see how the arm is very flexible. It can move up and down because it really is just sewn along that one line. And I'm going to make sure that the end is nicely tucked far away from the arm, so this would be too close to the arm. I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to put it a little bit farther away with my needle before I cut it and sew it. He is looking better than ever. I'm going to sew on the other arm now, but I will again save you the time and do it off camera. Little photo bomb for you there. He is excited to be getting his legs. So this will be essentially the same as the arms. I'm just going to place these so that they follow the curves of the body. The bottom of the monkey, I'm just going to put them right along that middle bottom and sew them so that they're pretty close to touching, but they won't exactly be connected. So again, I'll just do my loop stitch all the way through, making sure, especially on either side, like the little ends, the corners of those legs, you want to make sure those are very well sewn into the leg, because that is exactly where they will be falling out eventually. Where the yarn would get a little bit looser, pull out a little bit more. Just make sure that the ends are very nicely sewn in. Alright, so let's sew on this tail. Now I'm going to just start by threading my needle and sewing together the tail. Now it wouldn't make much of a difference if you crocheted the tail together like we did with the arms and legs, but I chose to sew it. I think it might give it a nicer flat finish. So I'm just going to go through with my needle across the top, back and forth, just sewing it very nicely together to be sewn to the butt of the monkey. And I am going to place it on the monkey so that it's just on the very bottom, kind of behind the two legs on the back of the monkey, and we are going to eventually curl it up and tuck it right there so that the tail is sitting nicely upright on the back of the monkey. And that's a very simple sewing technique that we can go over. So I'm just going to align it right there nice and flat, and then begin to whip stitch / loop stitch it shut. This will take a little bit of time, but it's much easier I think than the arms and the legs, just because you're working with maybe a little bit of a flatter surface, and the tail is very small, so it should go pretty quick. Now that I have sewn on the bottom of my tail, I'm going to bring my needle up to somewhere in the middle back region of the monkey. So right about there is right in the middle of the back. And I'm going to grab the tail so that it's curled very nicely on the back of the monkey. And I am going to bring my yarn through the back of the tail and make a little loop, just seat belting it to the back. I think this will keep it up nice and tight. I definitely think in the future, if I did this again, I would fortify it a little bit nicer, maybe with just a couple extra loops. But for right now, this will hold, especially if it's not going to like a little kid. If it's just going to, sit on a shelf, then that's totally fine. But I would definitely beware just to make sure that that is sewn in very nicely if you do plan on donating this item or giving it as a gift. Finally, I will go under the monkey's little armpit, cut the little tail, and shove it in with the back of the darning needle, and that will be all for the tail. Now let's talk about embroidering the eyes. So if I did not have those plastic eyes in and I wanted to make this, baby safe, I'd grab some brown or dark blue yarn and I would just whip up some cute little eyes with my yarn. So now I'm going to grab that yarn and that needle and leave a little tail at the back, as you can see, and make a loop for the eye and a loop for the other eye. It really doesn't have to be complicated. I just make 2 little loops going from the back eyelash part of the loop towards the front corner of the eye, just like so, and pulling my whole tail through. As I said with the mouth, you're going to want to make sure the tail that comes through is coming through the same hole as it went in, so that when you tie it and stick it in, it just goes in very nicely and won't cause, untangling or won't go in. So I'm just going to pull the eye forward a little bit so everything looks ship-shape and make a little knot with the yarn. Make sure your yarn doesn't get caught like it did for mine, but once you tie that knot, you can just cut the strings that are a little bit extra and stick it right back into the monkey. Lastly, I am going to give this monkey some blush. I know it might have been on the monkey in the last clip, but this is the perfect final flourish for the monkey. I am really just going to give it a little bit of a happy look. I think this will make the smile a little more cheeky. And I'm going to bring the needle through with the thread falling to the left there, waiting to be tied and stuffed in. Now once I make my first blush, I'm going to pull my needle all the way over to the other side of the eye, farther away from the eye, not in the corner of the eye, so that my blush can go inwards and then back out to where the thread initially went into the face. That way I can simply tie it and stuff it right back into the monkey. And with that, your monkey is done. Thank you guys so much for following along. I know it wasn't the most organized, but I really appreciate you staying with me, and I hope you enjoy your monkey.